Life is complex and wonderful. It is filled with trials and difficulties. It offers us the depths of pain and the pinnacles of joy and everything in between. How do we take from life all that it has to offer? How do we give back? How do we gain wisdom and strength from life's difficulties and not be overwhelmed or broken? And how do we fit into the vast expanse of the world? How do we help our children not only survive but thrive? The patterns we see in the universe and in life around us hold some insights. There is pattern in the universe, and we are the living expressions of those patterns. See, matter is ordered into simple patterns. These patterns flow into more complex patterns. And we can discover the nature of these patterns and express them in various types of language, in mathematics and art and architecture, stories, mythologies. There are many, many such patterns, and we can say that much of science and art is discovering and elucidating these patterns. We observe with wonder that certain patterns repeat at every scale of the universe. Some simple examples of many such patterns are the phi proportion and the Fibonacci sequence. There are many structures in the universe, small to large, that are patterned according to these two relationships. The spiral is one such form. The patterns of many plants, the seed patterns of sunflowers, the curl of ferns, the shape of seaweed, the spiral of a nautilus. Weather patterns that achieve a high level of organization follow this pattern. Hurricanes. As huge numbers of stars cluster together to form galaxies, we see a natural ordering according to discrete natural patterns. The circle is one pattern. The spiral is another. Even in the human body, we see this ordering. The human body is organized around many patterns. One of them is the phi proportion. The DNA that holds the pattern of our life is itself patterned on the phi proportion. The very beat of our heart is an expression of the phi proportion. Our teeth, our face. From the microscopic to the biologic to the planetary to the intergalactic, universal patterns seem to guide the ordering of large and complex systems. These patterns in nature have been observed for millennia. In fact, artists throughout the ages have realized that we perceive something as beautiful when it conforms to a universal pattern. The Acropolis in Athens is a classic example in architecture of an attempt to conform human civilization to these universal patterns, to make civilization a mirror of universal order. The ancients felt that structuring their society according to these universal patterns would align and harmonize their cultures with the transcendent elements of nature. They would achieve lasting value and enduring beauty by bringing the universal into the world through their depiction of these patterns in their culture's art. The art would act as a guide to living a wholesome life in harmony with the transcendent patterns of the universe. This process goes on today. Efforts to conform to these patterns are seen all over the world, in China, in India, in Europe. It was known that the phi proportion of the human body expressed in sculpture would not only render the art beautiful, but it would also make a statement about human nature. By incorporating these universal patterns into art, we are saying that we are an essential part of the universe. The very form of our body declares our link to all that is. By looking out, we see into ourselves. By looking in, we see the universe. We are that element of nature that allows the creation to reflect on itself. If we align ourselves with universal patterns, our lives express beauty and order and dynamic growth. If we fail to align with universal patterns, our lives are chaotic, disordered, and conflicted. The world we live in today is anything but ordered. Conflict is not only common, it is celebrated, it's even worshipped. This leads us to the question we are all asking. Are there universal patterns that can guide our lives and lead us to harmony and order? Are there patterns of human interaction that we are ignoring at our peril? What are the universal patterns of human interaction that we're missing? We can approach an answer when we consider that there are laws that govern the universe, but unlike other creatures who simply follow instinct, we require education and training. We need to be shown our place in the vast creation. We can make choices about our lives that other creatures are not free to do. What laws should guide our choices to help us live a harmonious life? There are various laws that govern the operation of the universe. At the subatomic level, there are the laws of quantum mechanics. At the level of our everyday lives, there are Newtonian mechanics that define the relationships of bodies to one another, from apples falling to the motion of planets and galaxies. If we were to travel at the speed of light, the laws of general relativity come into play and open up otherworldly and bizarre possibilities of multiple dimensions and wormholes. And in human society, the law for the struggle for survival seems to determine much of our social life. But are there other laws and principles, universal patterns of human self-perception, thinking, feeling, and communal behavior that would free us from the law of the struggle for survival, laws that might guide us to living harmoniously in our families, let alone in the profoundly diverse global community? Are we doomed to perpetual conflict and alienation? How can we build harmonious families, communities, schools, and businesses? How can we strengthen our nation and heal the world if we can never escape the gravitational pull of the struggle for survival and the conflict that results? The economic crisis, the environmental crisis, the security crisis, the population crisis, all are transnational problems. They all have causes and effects that transcend the man-made ideas of nation, race, gender roles, and religion. They all have roots in the limitations and the potential of human thought. What thoughts will liberate us from the worst in ourselves? What thoughts will liberate our vast personal and collective potential? Complex systems display pattern in their unity. There is unsuspected power in the resulting unity. What patterns will guide our unity? How big do we draw our circle? Who is in? Who is out? Uniformity, the opposite of unity, is the quality of lifelessness. Uniformity is static, not dynamic. It's rigid, not creative. In social systems, uniformity seeks dominance, not harmony. Uniformity, masquerading as unity, can be created around dangerous thoughts that exclude and demonize others. But unity in living systems, on the other hand, is dynamic and creative. It harmonizes diverse components to grow organically to a common end. Unity can be based on universal principles, patterns that operate at the highest levels of natural law. In these cases, unity is composed of diverse and complex components. There are 2 points to be made here about unity. One is that of conditions. The second is that of emergent properties. To make these points, imagine the hydrogen gas in a tank. Hydrogen has certain discrete properties. It bonds with almost everything. As a result, it's highly volatile. If we're not mindful of the conditions needed to work with hydrogen, it will blow up. If we are mindful of the conditions hydrogen requires to be used productively, it can be used for all sorts of useful purposes. Oxygen is the same way. It has all sorts of chemical properties that make it enormously useful. Again, if we're not mindful of the conditions required to use it, oxygen too will blow up. So, using something productively first requires understanding the conditions needed to use it. We have to first create the necessary conditions to take advantage of a substance's natural properties. This is as true of people as it is of chemical reactions. There are conditions, patterns of thinking, feeling, and behavior that are necessary to bring out the hidden potential of a person. If we ignore these conditions, these patterns, we won't get the best from someone. In fact, we're likely to get the worst. This brings us to a truly remarkable principle of nature, that of emergent properties. If we were to know all the properties of hydrogen, and all the properties of oxygen. There is no way in the world we would ever be able to guess the properties of water. The many and diverse properties of water are more than the sum of the properties of hydrogen and oxygen together. These are the emergent properties that result when the proper conditions, the conditions of unity, allow for the creation of water. Given the right conditions, water is made from the unity of oxygen and hydrogen. In the wrong conditions, oxygen and hydrogen explode in violent chaos. The properties of water are far more complex and versatile than the properties of either hydrogen or oxygen. Given the right conditions, hydrogen and oxygen create water, and that water then can sustain life, become a universal solvent. This is the case with all living systems as well. When complex and diverse elements are put together in the correct pattern, when they are united in the correct pattern, life happens. Emergent properties are displayed that spiral out in creative and dynamic ways. So, with this understanding, what are the proper conditions that will allow for the emergent properties of human potential to be made manifest? If we create the right conditions, if we create conditions of dynamic unity, we are able to move out of the realm of the law of the struggle for survival and enter into a new set of universal principles. In this state, exciting, vast, and unsuspected emergent properties of human potential can emerge that cannot even be imagined when we are operating from the laws of the struggle for survival, just as we cannot imagine the many unsuspected properties of water when we look at hydrogen and oxygen. If we follow certain patterns, certain universal principles, we can order our personal lives and our lives with each other in such a way as to bring out not only our own potential, but that of the group, our family, our school, our community, our nation, our world. Let's explore together how to create these conditions that are necessary for that kind of growth, for that kind of learning. If we create the right conditions, they will hold our growth, just like a bowl holds our food. The bowl of unity then allows for an outward spiral of personal and community growth along the lines of these universal principles. Our lives can then be in harmony, inwardly with ourselves and outwardly with others.